Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see everybody this evening. We're studying Revelation chapter 13 tonight. I brought a prop with me tonight. This is Michelangelo, the Ninja Turtle. And I brought this to show how kind you people are. Because last week, when we were studying Michael the Archangel, I called him Michelangelo 3 times. And y'all didn't say a word about me calling him Michelangelo. Tanya was laughing under her breath. I could see her laughing under her breath. But anyway, I appreciate y'all not making fun of me. And I know y'all thought, because I had a little hard episode, y'all didn't want to make fun of me. But, feel free to correct me anytime that I'm doing that. Because I knew I did it the second time. Yeah. I don't know what I was remembering, but so it was Michael the Archangel, not Michelangelo. But anyway, so Revelation chapter 13. To understand 13, I think we have to go back to what we studied in 12 last week, where we were really talking about Satan and his followers, and Christ and the church and his followers. And this fight that has gone on since the beginning, if you think about it, since the beginning of time, when Satan, he deceived Eve, and that fight became between the good and evil, between Christ and his followers, and the Satan and his followers, and how that took place last week. And it kind of continues the same thought this week. And there's several interpretations that we can take from this, and we'll read about all of those as we go through our study tonight. But so keep that in mind, and I think that thought is really going to follow us through the next few chapters of that fight between Satan, his followers, and Christ and the church and his followers, and how those things take place. And some of it's historical, and some of it is things that might happen in the future. So let's read 1 through about 10, I believe it is, and then we'll discuss that part and then go into the second one. It says, "And I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and his horns 10 crowns, and his heads and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And he was given authority to continue for 42 months. And he opened his mouth to blaspheme against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword will be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." So first we have this beast. It described there as rising from the sea. Now, why would it talk about the sea? Why would you think this beast would be coming out of the sea? I thought that was unique in the writing that said it came out of the sea. Okay, so if you look at a lot of the Hebrew writing, especially when you go to the Old Testament, the sea is always described as deadly or being a destructive force. And when it said it came out of the sea, like Psalm 29 says, "The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord is over many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty." In other words, it equates God's power to the power that's in the sea. And then if you go to Isaiah and 17 and verse 12. Again, here it's talking about the sea. It says, "Woe to the multitude of many people who will make a noise like the roar of the seas, and the rushing of nations that have been made a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters." There again, it's talking about the destructiveness and the might of water. And again in Isaiah 57 and 20, it talks again there about the sea and the power. And it said, "But the wicked are like the troubled sea when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt." So the Hebrew writings are always full of this. Anything that came out of the sea or had to do with the sea, it was a destructive force. And so whatever this was that was coming out of the sea, it sounds like it was a destructive force. But then it starts describing this beast that came up. And it sounds a lot like the beast we studied back in 12. The description is very close to that. And when it reads there that it was like a leopard, feet like the feet of a bear, mouth like the mouth of a lion, the dragon gave him its power and gave him its authority. A lot of people reference this back to Daniel chapter 7. And I'm going to go back to Daniel chapter 7. I'm going to read a little bit of that so we can kind of get a feeling of what Daniel's prophecy was as well. So in Daniel chapter 7, listen to this, what he described in his prophecy of what's going to come in his foretelling as well. And starting in 7 to verse 17, it says, "Those great beasts which are four kings which rise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I wish to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet. And the 10 horns which were on its head, and the other horn came up, before which 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth, which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than its fellows." And it says, "I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and provided against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Then he said, a fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who rise from the kingdom, and another shall rise after them that shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings, shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, shall intend to change times and laws, and the saints will be given unto his hands for a time and a time and a half." Sounds familiar, doesn't it? So this prophecy of Daniel is really speaking of this same prophecy that we're talking about. And so what exactly is this prophecy, do you think? What do you think this prophecy is talking about?
That at the end there's going to be 10 countries or kingdoms to come together, and they're going to be a world power, and we're going to have the Antichrist and his PR man doing his thing.
Okay. That's one of the same interpretations I read as well. There's another interpretation. If you go back and compare Daniel's interpretation, it compares like the 4 beasts it talks about there. They think were the 4 powers that were back during those times after Christ was crucified and during the time, actually the time of John. And those kingdoms would have been Babylon, Medo-Persian kingdom, the Macedonian kingdom, and then after that would have been the Roman Empire. And it's thinking that this 4th empire that it talks about there that was so powerful was the Roman Empire. And so when you think about, which kind of makes sense when you read about the fact that when it talked about these 4, that the description of how they looked like the lions and the leopard's feet, and it described them. And all four of these kingdoms were against God's people, from the Old Testament all the way up to the New Testament. And so, what did the Roman Empire do to Christianity?
They persecuted.
Yeah, they persecuted it all the way through. And so it talks about the kings that came up in the Roman Empire and how great destruction it was. And so many people think that this talking about this beast that rose up was really symptomatic of these kingdoms that have come up against God's kingdom all the time. And then in the end, there came up this Roman kingdom, which was greater than all the rest. And then, like Ray said, I read the other interpretation is this could be also be talking about end times, where it says, when it says all of those were people were following who? Satan. We're following the Satan and worshiping Satan. If you looked at the times we're going through now, do you think there's a lot of people that are followers of Satan? Now, while they might not call themselves worshipers of Satan, who is leading this evil that's going on? It's Satan. I mean, you think about when I was reading this, and you compare these evil kingdoms that are going against God's kingdom. It talks about how this beast being Satan and his followers, and how Satan gives power to these. He really, if you think about those kingdoms that are against Christianity, who was leading them against Christianity? It was Satan. Who's leading people today against Christianity and morality? It's Satan and his followers. And I look at what was going on. I mean, could anybody except a follower of Satan do what was done in Israel to those Israeli people?
I think sometimes it might be disguised as a religion.
Yeah.
That is very evil.
Yeah.
Now, Daniel was written centuries before John.
Absolutely.
But the vision was given to both men, so that should convict us about that this is God's writings.
Yeah. No doubt. I mean, you look at those parallels that they wrote about and how these things are going to take place, and they have taken place, and they are taking place now. And it's hard for us to believe that Satan, why would Satan be given that much power? This is the question that always comes up. Why would Satan be given that much power?
God allows it.
He allows it. Because every time we read about this power of this authority that's given to this beast or given to Satan, it's a limited amount of time. It never says that this is going to go to the end. It says times or times and a half, or it gives months or years, but it's always a limited amount of time.
I thought, Ecclesiastes, I can't say what chapter or verse, where Solomon says nothing new is under the sun.
Right.
The Bible can't contradict itself, so it just lets you know that history does repeat itself. I just had that thought of it being the same as Daniel's vision. What's going on now?
Yeah, Daniel's vision, what happened then, and we're seeing it happen now. It's kind of that same thing, and when Satan has been given power, I kind of compare it to, look at Job. What was Satan allowed to do to Job? Everything but kill him. But Job overcame. So, Satan has been given power. And remember what you call Satan, the king of the earth? Been given power on earth. And so, a lot of this evil that's going on and things we see are those who are following him. And I thought it was interesting that it said authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. And all who dwell on the earth will worship him, except those whose names have been written in the book of life of the Lamb. And those will be those who are followers of Christ. In other words, if you're followers of Christ, you're not going to let Satan affect you. You're not going to be taken over by Satan. But if you're not of that same group, what's going to happen? Satan can overtake you. And it's a scary thought that Satan can have that kind of power and people could be that evil. But when you look around, it's kind of that way, isn't it? I mean, you think about how can anybody be led to do what people are doing today except through the power of Satan? And so Satan has been against Christ and God and his throne since the beginning. So if you go back to these early kingdoms of the Old Testament, how they fought against God's people then you look at the Roman Empire, how it fought against Christianity. And when we get into the second beast, what did the Church of Rome do to Christianity?
Well, they put to death ones who was presenting the gospel.
Yeah. So you think about where did the Church of Rome come from?
Man.
It was created by man and became a deity of men, if you will. When you see that, and when we read the second part of this, a lot of people think it's referring to that part of the Roman Empire that came about as well. But like I say, when I was reading this part and about how we read about this beast, and if you really, can you imagine John seeing this? I'm trying to visualize what exactly is John seeing here. And when he describes this beast and what he looks like, I mean, what if you saw that? I mean, is that a fearful thing to see? And that's what he meant for it to be. He said, I want you to, remember he told John in the beginning, write what you see. Write what you see. And let this be a lesson for you.
You know, you look at the persecutions during that time with Nero, when he was the emperor of
Yep.
Rome and stuff. And then look at World War II. Look at the Holocaust. Look at what just happened a few weeks here ago.
Yeah.
All to the Jewish people.
Right.
And this spreads out over hundreds of years.
Right.
The most atrocities are to these people.
It has been.
Seems like.
Through history it has been.
There it is.
Look, even look at our own country today. You know, the one thing I can't understand is all of these protests that are going on against Israel. Because that, like so a lot of them are saying, those protests against Israel are actually protests in favor of Hamas, the terrorists.
Well, you got professors that's in the classroom that's brainwashing these kids, a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, could this be the devil's workers? I mean, how would you look at that? I mean,
How would you look at it any differently? I mean, you
Yeah.
think about it, and how do you look at history and not see what's going on and understand it through history of what's happened to the Jewish people and in Israel, and especially when you look at biblical history and God's chosen people and what happened to them from the beginning up until now, and this was predicted in the Old Testament that this would happen. There will never be peace in the Middle East. I truly believe there will never ever be peace in the Middle East because of this infighting that's going on since the beginning of when God chose the children of Israel to be his people. And, you know, you look at all the enemies against them, and it continues even to today.
these Palestinians, are they not maybe the Canaanites of biblical time?
So Palestine is not a nation.
Right.
Think about it.
But the people,
They're a people and a religion, if you will. So it's interesting when you look at the events that are happening today. I thought it was kind of ironic that we're studying this during the time that all of this is going on. And it kind of falls all together with what's being written here in Revelation about what's happened over a period of time and how Satan is given all this power. And the next part of that, when we start reading about the mark that people are going to have and that kind of thing, that really gets interesting. So we'll get into that in a minute. But one of the things I want to point out in the last part of this, reading in verse 10, he says, and here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Here we have all these writings about what's happening, the beast been given the power, and how all those be dwelling worshiping him, except those who are followers of the Lamb, who was slain from the foundation of the world. He He says, anyone has an ear, let him hear. Then he said, here is the patience and faith of the saints. What does that mean, and why is it put right there in that context?
We're to keep the faith regardless of how big and fancy, loud, or quiet, or whatever happens. We're to keep the faith.
This is the patience and faith. We have to be patient during this time. Because when he said that the beast, Satan, is going to be given this power, and we're going to see all these followers, we don't understand that, do we? We don't understand how, number one, Satan can be given that much power, but also how could people be followers of that? How could people be followers of that kind of evil? And he said this is where the patience and faith of the saints is going to come in. We have to have that patience and faith and trust. That we trust God, that all these things are happening for a reason. We have to trust in his plan for that.
During another reading I had read regarding the beast, the dragon, they're saying, was Satan. This beast was the son of Satan, who ultimately was the Antichrist. And he parallels Jesus in the death and resurrection here in number 3, where they thought he was dead and he came back to life. And that added credibility to what he was going to be doing to the world by him doing that. And he exploited that to the world. Look what I did. I was dead and I came back from the dead.
Right. I have power over that.
I have power.
I have power over that. So, and that could be part of it as well. Be a part of that teaching, right?
Last week, we talked about, in the end, God went out over Satan. And then I think Ray said, he knows that, and then I think Carla said, she don't think he does know that. But it looks to me like he would have a lot of confidence that he's going to win. I mean,
That Satan's going to win? Yeah.
even now, it's more, it seems to me like, and how would we determine if he didn't? He took more. It looks to me like he's going to take more with him than God's going to take. In the end.
It does look that way. When he said, when you read it, it says, and all who dwell on earth will worship him, except those who are followers of the Lamb that was slain, which is talking about Christ. Are there going to be more in that number than there are that are followers of Christ?
You'd like to think now, but there probably will be.
I think there probably will be, based on this and based on the fact that Christ himself said, narrow is the way and few there be that find it. Now that don't mean it's going to be 2 or 3, but when you think of few in comparison to those who follow Satan, like Ronnie said, there's going to be a lot of people following that way. Because evil has always enticed people. Because evil doesn't make you, forsake anything. You can do anything under the power of evil, and that's what Satan, that's what his power is, to bring people to that. And like I say, I think Satan does think he's going to have power, but in the end, God's going to win out, and this is going to play out through Revelation. But there's going to be a battle, and the battle is going to go all the way to the end. And as we study this, we're going to see that the battle gets worse for the Christians before it gets better. And I think this is part of when he says a lot of those people are going to be following the beast, going to be following Satan during this time. That are not following, but those of us who are following Christ have to trust the plan. And that's, I think that becomes our challenge, is because if you sit down and try to understand the evil that's going on right now, can you really understand it? You really can't. And when you look at what's describing here, he says, this is the patience and faith of the saints. We have to have faith and patience in God's plans playing out here. Even though Satan has this power and we see this evil going on.
But all this turmoil is not against Christians today, it's against the Jews.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with trying to understand why just the Jews? I mean, why wouldn't God say my chosen people and the Christians? I'm not putting words together, but I'm just asking. I mean, everything right now is the Jewish.
They've
See,
been
the
against
Jewish or the Muslims.
what's happened. And, but you think about this, is there always been a tie between God's chosen people, the children of Israel, and Christians? There's always been that tie. Because you think about who was Christ offered to first?
Jews.
His chosen people. And so, then it came to the Gentiles. So there's always been that connection of the Jews and the Gentiles together and followers of God and then followers of Christ. Unfortunately, a lot of the Jews rejected Christ. They rejected Christ as it were, but there's always that connection. And I think while we see a lot of things happening to the Jewish nation right now, I think a lot of this is going to also come onto followers of Christ as well. And I think we're going to see, as we study this on through, we're going to see that happening to the followers of Christ as well, because we're not being persecuted here in this country, but when you go all over the world, look at Christianity all over the world. There are a lot of people that can't be Christians in places around the country. You can't preach Christianity in a lot of people, in a lot of places around the world. We almost have to quit thinking of ourselves as the nation of Christians and look around at the world and what's happening in the world to Christians and Christianity and how it's being fought against and taught against. From anybody from the Muslim religions to, there was a guy that read the other day, he read from the Quran, and one of the things that the Quran said was, anybody who teaches or believes anything other than what's written in the Quran, kill them. That's how it reads. So, would that include Christianity? Absolutely. So I think we're seeing some of that happen, but I think, is it going to become worse in our country? I think it will. Just because of what we're seeing today. And what we're seeing the people, even being against Israel, I think it is going to get worse, you know. So let's read about the second beast, and that'll kind of get us on track. So let's read that. So it started in verse 11. Said, I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, who had two horns like a lamb and like a dragon, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not follow the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has a mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. The number is 666. What do we equate the number 666 with? The devil. That's the devil's number. So, who is this second beast, and what does all this mean?
He's the devil's prophet. Is who he is.
The devil's
Prophet.
Yeah, the devil's preacher. I would call him the devil's preacher almost. Teaching the things of Satan, if you will. There's some who believe that this is talking some about the Roman government and Rome during this time, that were teaching things against Christianity, when it said they would create an image, and what kind of worship was going on during the time, during Christ and even after Christ?
Aye.
There was idolatrous worship going on. They were creating their own gods. It's thought this mark on the right hand or their foreheads is an interesting concept. There are numerous things out there about what people think this is. Some people think that at the end, when it comes toward the end of times, we will all have a number or a something on us that if you don't have that number, you can't buy or sell or do anything with the nations that are going to be ruling at that time. But sometimes there will be one world nation, if you will. That this one world nation will guide everything, and this number or this mark is how you will buy, sell anything.
And there'll only be one global currency.
Yeah, there'll be one global currency out there, and you can't, without it, you can't do anything. That's where they're believing this is going to come from. And that's what they think is going to happen on the earth. The other interpretation I had, they thought that this was talking about during the time of the Roman Empire, when Martin V was a pope. He was under the council of Constantine. They prohibited Roman Catholics to dwell in their countries, to make any bargains, to trade anything, to bear any civil offices of any kind. And this was during the time of the Roman Empire. And they think this is talking about that period of time. So there's two interpretations out there. One is a historic interpretation, that this was during that time of the Roman Empire, that unless you were part of that empire, you had this quote-unquote mark or whatever symbol that would have been, that you could not do any business in that area unless you had that number, unless you were included in that number. And then others think this might have been, this could be talking about toward the end of time, that there'll be this one global currency, this one global nation that everybody will be under. And if you look at it, there are a lot of people around the world today that are trying to get to exactly that. There are a lot of people today trying to get the whole world, the whole earth, under one global power, under one global currency that controls everything. That sounds a lot like communism, doesn't it? It really does. But a lot of people think that that's what this is talking about. That this could come to power toward the end of times, that there will be one global power and they will control everything under one currency and that kind of thing. The next day, and then you have the other interpretation that it's talking about the Roman Empire during that time when they limited people being able to buy and sell unless you were a part of that empire.
The numbers itself, the 7 is a perfect number, and that represents God according to some of the literature. The 6 is an imperfect number, and it represents man being imperfect. And they think the 666 is devil, the beast out of the water, which is the Antichrist, and then the PR man, for lack of better words, the one that came up out of the earth, and that's the 3 6s.
Satan and the followers of Satan.
Right.
Basically. Yeah. Because anytime the number 666 comes up, what do people do?
Shudder.
Shudder. Yeah, I've calculated pricing before on some of our products, and if it ever comes up 666, I'm like, no, we're going $1 more, $1 less. We're going somewhere else. We're not doing this. But we equate that because it is a number. Now, whether this is talking about during the time of in the Roman Empire where they wouldn't let people trade and do that kind of things, or there are a tremendous amount of people out there that believe this, that at the end of times there's going to be one global power and one global currency, and there are so many people out there. If you go and study it right now, just go to one global power and look at it, there's a lot of people out there that are pushing for one global power that controls everything. And, you know, that would be a scary thing to happen, but they're thinking this might be what it is, but it's interesting that the way this is written, because it really is talking about this fight between God and Christ and their followers and Satan and his followers. If you really interpret it down to what the real meaning is, that's really what it's talking about. But this imagery, I think, you think, why was it written in this kind of imagery? You know, why write it this way? I don't have the reason why, but one of the things I see is this is scary. This is scary.
I have a question.
Yes,
Talking about the world and all that, the end times.
yes.
And talking about that mark, do you think that mark that they're gonna make you have to buy and sell in the end would be Satan's mark?
Mark of the beast. Some people call it the mark of the
I've
beast.
kinda heard that. I was wondering.
I've heard the same thing, that it could be the mark of the beast.
Because if you can't buy or sell and you take that mark,
Yeah,
if it's what that is.
if it's the mark of the beast, yeah.
Who was that Soviet leader that had the birthmark on his head and everybody said that was a mark?
Was it Gorbachev?
I think it was, had
I think
a
it was
birth on
Gorbachev.
his forehead or.
They called him the mark of the beast. That'd be bad, wouldn't it? You know, he had the mark of the beast on him. But, and it is hard to, because there again, if you interpret it that way, there again, you have to have that to buy, sell, trade, do anything. And there's people that are thinking that it's being pushed right now, that it could happen toward the end of times. And, you know, you don't want the mark of the beast on you, but if you don't have the mark of the beast on you, guess what? If that's why it's called, you won't be able to do anything.
We got a real problem in our culture right now. I think because of church attendance.
Yeah.
It's falling off. And a lot of the young people, they don't have any structure.
Right.
And they go to school and they are influenced by others because they have no church.
Right.
And like I said before, some of these professors are teaching evil to these people. Their influences, because they haven't been brought up in the ammunition structure of the Lord. I mean, that's what we was
Right.
taught.
If you have no biblical history at all, and you only have secular history, you could be taught just about anything. You really could. If you have no biblical history, you have no foundation, like you say, haven't been brought up under that. And I think that's a large problem today, that you haven't. And, you know, it's scary for our kids, our grandkids, of what's being taught. Hopefully we teach them the right way and they have that they're not influenced by it, but we see it so much in not only, you know, it's even in elementary and high school and especially when you get into college, you know, that's what it's really being taught. So, but it's interesting. I think next week we'll go into some more of this. And again, it's going to be the fighting between the Lamb of God and Satan. We're going to continue that. And I think this continues really on through about chapter 20, somewhere in that area where he's teaching the same thing.